The winningest team in baseball also has the most saves, and people who save the most money are winners. So start earning saves by investing in worthy bonds for only $10 each. These bonds earn a fixed 7% APY, and there's no fees, penalties, or minimum balance required, and they can be redeemed whenever you like. You can even round up everyday purchases to buy additional bonds. Go to worthybonds.com/save. That's worthybonds.com/save and save and win.
Welcome back to Let's Talk About It with Janelle King. I provided some background as to why it seems to be just extremely tough to communicate with Black women and to share this conservative message. I mean, I think the miscommunication is just so convoluted and confusing at times. And sometimes it sounds like it may be correct, but then there's a little bit of fallacy that's in there that makes the entire message corrupt. And then we have a problem. So let's bring in our guests. I have Felecia Killings with me. And if you missed her bio that happens to be read in the first half, don't worry, you can catch up by listening to the full podcast on this coming Tuesday when it drops. And you can listen to it anywhere where you get your podcast. Let's talk about it with Janelle King. So welcome, Felecia. Welcome, welcome, welcome.
Thank you. Thank you. I'm so excited to chat with you. It's always great to connect. I love you and your husband. And yeah, I'm just really excited.
Thank you. And we love you, okay? You never cease to entertain, but at the same time spill truth on Twitter. Yes. And I love it, love it, love it. So let's get started with this question. Mm-hmm. Are there some truths when we hear about all these oppression factors that's happening to women? Do you think there's some truth to the argument?
Yeah, I think when we're talking to voters in particular and they're raising, some serious concerns, I think even if we don't agree entirely about what those concerns are or if they view it as oppression, it's still important for us to at least have those conversations. So, you'll hear some women talking about abortion access or anti-abortion bills as a form of oppression and, just different things like that. So it's like, okay, well, let's have these conversations and see if we can come to a conservative solution that perhaps others will be able to, entertain. So that's what I try to do. Like, I never want to tell a woman, like, no, that's not oppression, when in her eyes it might be. So, just sitting in the seat as a listener and coming from that conservative solutionary perspective, that's where we start to make really great strategic inroads. So
I like that point. I like that point because it's like you're not affirming or validating that what they're saying is correct. You're just letting them know that I do hear you because it feels correct to them.
Right.
So that's definitely one angle.
Yeah, and it's their story, right? If they're coming with their story and they're saying, hey, this particular policy is oppressive to me and whatnot, it's like, okay, well, let's sit down and chat, and you can start with the fellowship and just kind of build from there. And then I believe, as time goes on and you get to start talking politics with some of these individuals, then the barriers, I would just say the communication barriers drop. And now we have more of what I call strategic, effective outreach.
Why do you feel like, well, first let me ask this. Do you think that the messaging towards Black women from the left is different than the messaging towards white women or other groups?
Oh, most definitely. So let's talk about abortion, for example. Whenever they talk to Black women about reproductive rights and health care and things along that nature, they sell what I call death marketing. And when women are talking about, especially Black women, when they're talking about economic opportunities, educational opportunities for their children, the message from the left is more death, right? It's not any kind of, pathway of success. They're not talking about, how women can get access to these pregnancy centers. You know what I mean? So it's a very death message especially to Black women. Now, when you compare that with other groups, you don't see the same thing. So if, we rarely see Hispanic women, these billboards, with their faces talking about, abortion is healthcare, but they have no problem using Black women as their spokesperson. And this is pretty much how they use Black women in their marketing. If white women want abortion, they'll talk about how much Black girls need access to it. So those things take place, and this is why I say conservative, like we have an opportunity to engage in the conversations and present better messaging that speaks to life. It goes beyond the ideas of creating more anti-abortion laws. It actually, our message can focus on solutions. Like if we were talking about maternal health care and the death rates and whatnot, it's like, all right, so what can we do? Let's start talking about Black doulas. Let's start talking about Black midwives. Let's start talking about, different ways that the community can come together to help and support Black women. And now we have a completely different conversation. You know what I mean?
Yes, absolutely.
Yeah, that's where we want to get to.
And to your point, right, I always kind of cringe when I see a Black woman representing Planned Parenthood because obviously for the historical references, right? I mean, Margaret Sanger clearly did not like Black people and created Planned Parenthood to exterminate us. And so I always think that's a little silly, and it is cringy to me. Now, and then there was a time where I saw a protest where there were a couple of white girls who were protesting abortion and the support of abortion by holding Black babies. And I thought that baby dolls. And I thought that was also bizarre. Did you remember seeing that? I mean, that was just really weird.
No, I didn't see that last image, but it is very clear that whenever they want to push the abortion topic, they do bring up Black women. For example, I remember watching this hearing with Tim Scott as he was addressing Janet Yellen, who's the U.S. president or something. And she was talking about how much, the access to abortion is important for Black girls. And I'm like, you've got to be kidding me when you're talking about minors here. And it's not even, she didn't bring up the topic about these girls being raped or, you know what I mean? It's like, no, they just need access to abortion. And when you look at it, it's like these eugenics, they're not even hiding themselves anymore. And so it's like, all right, let's get Black women to see, like, this is serious death marketing that they're pushing here, and you don't have to accept this. This doesn't have to be the only message. But, conservatives like you and I, we have to be present to be able to, present these different messages that would give Black women options. Because, and if you even look at the numbers, when it came to some of the top issues for Black voters, abortion was not at the top.
No.
Like, it was barely on the list. And so it's like Black America is not asking for more access to death. They're asking for opportunities. They're asking to get crime out of their neighborhoods. They're asking for better protection and you know what I mean? These are the things they're asking for, not how best to kill the baby in the womb. And so when conservatives start to have these conversations with them, it'll be a lot easier to make these inroads with that particular demographic.
I do see a separation between the conversation amongst Black men and Black women, and abortion tends to kind of target Black women. What are some other issues that you feel is uniquely designed for Black women that you don't hear so much particularly coming from the conservative side, but maybe it's being pushed on the left?
Well, let's talk about education, for example. So one of the things we're trying to do with the conscious conservative movement is to frame some new messaging that would target also Black women. In 2020 and 2022, we really focused heavily on Black men and getting their voices and desire for tangibles heard on the right. And so this round, we are also incorporating more strategic messaging related to education and particularly homeschooling. So during 2020, the pandemic, we saw this massive increase among Black families who were entering the homeschool industry. It went from 3% to 16%. And that number continues to grow because Black families were basically forced into this new way of educating their children because they had to, right? They had to be at home with them. And so they started to discover how easier it was to provide the quality education that they know their children needed. And some of the reasons for Black families going into this direction also included them complaining about racism in their progressive schools, the discipline, the lack of proper education, not being able to teach Black history the way that they wanted. So they were able to experience this kind of freedom. And one of the things when it comes to Black women, like we love our children and we want the absolute best education for them. And so what better way to provide that and to get the kind of support and protection they need than for them to get in connection with conservatives who are also pushing for, protection for homeschooling or access to school choice options. So that's one of the areas that I really push heavily with conservatives. Like, let's start talking about these conversations with Black women. Number one, again, we love our babies. We're not we're not in line waiting to abort them, but if that's the only option that women are being presented with as a solution to, their poverty or what have you, then it's like, well, yeah, we're going to see that continue. But if they start to see that, they can start online businesses and, make up some money here and there with the virtual market, and they're able to homeschool their children, if they can have access to some funding to help them with that. I mean, now we're having a complete revolution, revival, I guess you can say, within Black America. So these are much more empowering conversations, right? And it's like, what Black woman would say no to that?
I totally agree. I totally agree, 100%. And so let's talk about this divide, right? So there is clearly a divide within even the Black woman space. I feel like when I talk to my more middle to upper class Black women, it's as if they have no clue what's going on when it comes to our lower income communities. And I feel like I find it easier to talk to those who are in our lower income communities and more on the blue collar space, because they just seem to be more open to solutions, right? And then the gatekeepers are the women that are in the other group. So what do you feel like there's two separate messages to each? And if so, what are they?
Yeah, I think so. And I think I noticed it much more when I came to Georgia. So in California, I didn't really experience that kind of conversation, because over there, it's pretty typical to have Black middle class, economics, if you will. But when I came to Georgia, it was very different. I noticed that when Black women saw my accolades, they saw my degrees, they saw the ministry that I had, it was like, oh my gosh, wow,
Right. They love you.
So it's like, so the perception is very different. I think once you have those I guess letters behind your name, and so it's this idea of the talented tenth, right? Like there's a certain class of Black Americans who pretty much determine what happens with the rest of the 90%. But that is a purely Black progressive point of view. Whereas with Black conservatism, we're like, anyone can have access to this if we're able to provide the teaching, and if we can remove some of these relations that are preventing Black women, for example, from experiencing success. So it's like, definitely, if we're seeing, lower income women struggling, and we have solutions, we have ideas that really help us flourish at this particular level, we're more willing to share that, right? It's like, it's just a different kind of mindset versus if you are dealing with individuals who are part of, I guess I could say the Black bourgeois.
Right. That became even more known with this whole Ebony Williams thing, right?
Yeah. And it's like, if you are a part of that, then, they're going to say that, government needs to be there. It needs to be funded to take care of, the Black lower class. And that is the divide I see happening even among conversations as it relates to Black women. And I won't say that all of the Black women, especially out here, are like that. But I think it's just because of the way progressivism has been sold to both, type of Black individuals. It's like progressivism is being sold as charity to the poor. It's being sold sold as helping the poor. And so it's like, of course, of course we want to help our people, right?
Right.
We don't want to see the poor just struggling. But it's like, no, understand that kind of transaction between progressive government and the poor is producing more poverty, is producing more destruction, is producing more death. And so if we can, as Black conservative women, get into those conversations where even if, the talented tip doesn't want to hear it, like, I'm not concerned with trying to convert them. I don't care, right? I'd rather give these other women options to understand, like, here, we know you want to thrive. We know you want to succeed. Here's an option. And whether you choose Black conservatism or Black progressivism, that's on you. But at least you have choices now. So,
you know what? It's interesting because I mentioned Ebony Williams, right? I'm sure you're familiar with all of that.
Yeah.
For those who are listening, she was on a show, her show, and she had a guest, Dr. Iyanla Van Zandt, and she asked her, would you date a bus driver? And she said, if you own the bus. And it kind of started this uproar in the Black community about, her kind of putting down blue collar workers and all that stuff. And what I heard as a Black conservative woman, I'm like, oh, well, if we understand that we can bring value to the team. And if you may be a bus driver when I meet you, but if you have desire to own the bus, then we're going to help you get there. That's a different conversation. But, she doubled down. It wasn't, helpful in her response. But I thought of that because that's what you're kind of talking about, right? It's like that disconnect between the successful, wealthy Black people and then those who are still building. Now, when it comes to this, I have a question. Do you think Black men are the answer to winning over Black women?
Yes, and here's why. So Black women are predominantly conservative and moderate in our views. And we love our Black men. We love our Black fathers, our husbands, our sons, right? And we understand, different roles, I guess you could say. And so, and maybe if I use my own example, this will help out. So my father is a Black Republican, Black conservative, and that's all I've known ever about him. During the 80s, pretty much switched parties and began to affiliate with conservatism. And so because of my love and respect for Dad, like him talking to me about politics, that was it for me. So it was like, okay, I'm going to follow Dad's lead because I trust him. And it doesn't mean he indoctrinated me or anything like that, right? Like he allowed me to flourish in my knowledge. But that's pretty much what you'll see happening with a lot of Black women because we trust their leadership. And we recognize, like, hey, okay, we might be the ones to spend the most time with the kids. You might be talking about politics and business or whatever. Cool. All right, let me know what page we need to be on so we can work together. You know what I mean?
Oh, yeah.
So it's like that kind of camaraderie. I'm not saying the word, but you get what I'm saying. That fellowship.
Yeah, the camaraderie.
There we go. There we go. I was getting tongue-tied. But we see that camaraderie, and that's what you will see with a lot of Black women as well. So even though Democrats right now have pretty much this big influence when it comes to Black women, understand that that's just a portion of the eligible voting bloc. There are millions of Black women who are not even participating right now. They are angry with the Democrat Party, and they do love Black men. They don't like seeing the disrespect from the Republican Party and from the Democrat Party. And so if Black conservatives like you and I started having conversations with them, and, allowing Black men to have that space, like, I'm telling you, we're going to see a completely different kind of Black conservative movement just by starting these conversations.
Absolutely. I mean, we are definitely pushing to have authentic conversations and not the Google conversations. And I say that because I'm like, a lot of times I'll hear Republicans try to talk to Black people about these particular topics, and they throw out these Google stats that, that you have to flush out because there are some aspects of it that could be, true. Before we go to the break, I have one more question for you. And then after the break, we're going to talk about some solutions from your perspective and hear more about your organization, how people can follow you. But where do what are your concerns? Like, what is a concern as it relates to the direction of the country regarding Black women? Because I do believe there's something that's happening right now when it comes to the lack of, just getting married, having kids, this whole push into career only. But that's me, right? So you work with women, and I know you've worked with single moms. What's a concern that you see that relates to the direction of this country?
Well, again, this goes back to the progressive messaging, right? And if Black women have been only getting a certain message for such a long time, then they'll buy into it. And I think what's happening now, especially if you actually look at the relationship space and you pay attention to some of their content now, a lot of their content is toxic, but there's some good stuff out there. You're starting to see a lot more Black women who are like, you know what? Something's not working. Like, why am I in this single mother household? How come I feel this way about men? Like, something is broken here. And that realization that's allowing these women to say, okay, let's try something else. And that's really where Black conservative women can come and have these great conversations. So it is a competition of ideas, right? And it's about, giving them enough principles, giving them enough evidence and examples to prove how or why certain ideologies would work and others wouldn't. That, again, is just a very different conversation, which will produce great results.
Right. And, I am guilty of not having compassion towards the bourgeoisie or whatever, because, I really am. Like, I kind of call them out, but listening to you, I'm hearing that there's an element of this that I have to keep in mind, is that there are other women mixed into this pool, right, that really do need to hear a message of compassion and understanding. And so I think I can soften my approach a tad bit, but but I just get so frustrated with this, with all of it.
I understand, because it's like, oh my gosh, like the talented tens, when you actually study them, it's like, oh my God, these people are so mean.
It's so annoying.
It's amazing. But then again, when you have that progressive message, and even with them, it's like, okay, if you get a certain degree, or if you're a part of a certain sorority or whatever, then you get this status, and it's like, well, how come other Black people can't do it? Well, they could if they had access.
Right.
So it's like, have those conversations even with them. So
yeah, I'm with you 100%, and I do think that there's something to be said about this, and I think we can we have to do something together that's a live event, so that we can really invite Black women to come sit with us. And I want to bring in older women too. I think we're missing an element of older women, right? Our grandparents have gotten a lot younger, and that wisdom to me is just not there. And so how do you know to be a woman as we're growing and we're growing into our womanhood? I'm surrounded by older women right now. I submerge myself in it because I need to learn these things. And so that's something that's really, really important as well.
The winningest team in baseball also has the most saves, and people who save the most money are winners. So start earning saves by investing in worthy bonds for only $10 each. These bonds earn a fixed 7% APY, and there's no fees, penalties, or minimum balance required, and they can be redeemed whenever you like. You can even round up everyday purchases to buy additional bonds. Go to worthybonds.com/save. That's worthybonds.com/save, and save and win.
Spring is here and baseball is back.
You can't forget the Derby. I love the hats. Do you have yours yet?
My hat? I treated myself to a whole outfit.
If you want to be able to treat yourself, then you should check out the Nest Savings Account at LGE Community Credit Union, where they want you to reach your savings goals faster.
Take it from a pair of 680 The Fan wives. Head to lgeccu.org to find out what makes their team #1 in Georgia.
Welcome back to Let's Talk About It with Janelle King. I am your host, Janelle King. And if you're joining us for the first time, do not worry. I know you feel like, oh my God, I've missed it. No, you can catch the full episode on my podcast, which will air on this coming Tuesday. And if you don't know how to find it, you can go to my social media platforms and particularly my Instagram, which is J King the Podcast. I have a link that you can click on and you'll be able to find the best way for you to listen. Otherwise, we are on all platforms. So with 67% of Black households being led by single parents and about 51% of all violent crimes being committed by Black men, it's clear we have dropped the ball. And I believe that it's at the center of the family dynamic and the lack thereof. And so I am joined with my friend, Felecia Killings, who is an expert in this area. And we've just been talking. So can you provide us some insight on I know we talked about the particular topics that we can utilize to message to Black women, but what's a message of hope? If there's a Black woman listening right now who may be hating on us, but there's some that are not. So what's your message?
Well, before I get to the message, let me clarify. So Pew Research just dropped some new data about Black families in March 2023. And this is what I've been doing heavily to push, not just in Twitter, but everywhere I can go. I'm like, we got new data, y'all. Okay. Black America has been building
School me.
Data. So the data revealed that 39% of our Black households now have married couples in it. And only 31% of our households are governed by a single mother. And that means that the other households, this doesn't even include those who cohabitate. So now we see this massive shift that has completely, taken place. So it's not 67% anymore. And I don't really know where that number came from, but let's just go with it, right? Especially coming out of the 80s. But one thing that has happened is we have seen several Black millennials who have been able to look at the past few decades, and they're saying there's no way we're going to continue this madness. And so Black men in particular have really taken on the reins of rebuilding the families and making sure that they, even if they're not married to the woman, that they're in the child's life. And so, like I said, new data started to come out and was released in order to, prove what had been done. So we see these numbers have increased with marriages, with Black marriages, decreasing with Black single motherhood, which is amazing. But still, it's like, let's get this thing to zero because there's power in having married couples. There's power in having two minds in one house that's fulfilling one singular vision. And so as we begin to see these numbers improving, number one, Black conservatives should celebrate this and to make it very known, especially to folks on the right, like, no, look, Black America has been building. Let's make sure that we are presenting policies that are going to protect what they build. So as these couples are coming together, is it possible for them to have access to training in, various fields like the online business sector, or, what kind of opportunities can be presented to them, and then what policies can be present to protect that? Because progressivism has this habit of always wanting to destroy every time we try to build, every single time. So I'm like,
that's been happening for so long.
Right. Yeah. So it's like, okay, let's get in here before progressivism continues to, with its destruction. Let's get in here and have these conversations about politics. And so if Black men are having access to better economic opportunities, if Black women, same for them, and they want to just, stay home and homeschool the children, like I'm telling you, all these great conversations can take place because there is this revival happening in Black America, and we're seeing some evidence of it with a lot of the social media movements that have taken place. For example, if you go to Instagram, you can type in hashtag Black marriages, and you can see this revival of, just Black men and Black women getting married. And it's so beautiful, right? It's
right,
like,
it is.
Now younger couples are coming up. They want to get married. They're seeing the value of it.
Mm-hmm.
And that's what we want to continue to build upon. So that pretty much is a message really to
That's
conservatives. Like, get in there and have those great conversations, protect, teach them about politics that protect. And then for Black Americans who are listening, it's like, understand, at least from us, at least from this group of Black conservatives, we see you. We see the work. We love you. We love the people. And we will be here to be that access point for you. So hopefully that's a blessing. And hopefully I was able to answer your question.
No, absolutely you did. And that is a great point. I'm so glad you brought in the new data, because my data was a few years back, because, you know, it's kind of hard to find, you know, the most recent. And and I'm happy to hear that. And the thing about it, too, is like, you're right. On social media, I am seeing more and more of this push towards family, right? And then I get a little concerned because I see the push towards family, but then I hear these conversations. It's almost teaching women to, you know, make their men docile. And that's a whole other conversation. But, you know, these overly emotional men. Like, come on, girls, let men be men. You want that.
Exactly. And it's like, but at least the ideas are competing, right? At least they're getting these options, and it's not just this one-sided anti-men, especially anti-Black men message. It is so much better. And like I said, it can be very toxic out here, but the more we have the empowering message going forward, the more we're just going to see this kind of increase just continue to grow and grow.
And we do have a long way to go. I think in 1930, Robert Woodson was saying that we were at like a 10% single parent household, and I still think that's even too high. So, you know, I'm looking forward. I'm sorry. 10%. So I'm looking forward to continuing to see that number go down, because it ultimately helps us all together. Before we close, can you please tell everyone how they can follow you, what you're working on, and just how they can connect with you?
Yeah, so people can go to FeleciaKillings.org. That's with 2 E's, Felecia. And right now, my CCM team and I, we are preparing for election 2024. We're preparing. This October, I'm having a convention for leaders,
I love it.
Conservative leaders out here in Atlanta, Georgia. We're going to come together for 3 days of really great empowerment. But I'm also going to host the first annual debate, this great debate between Black progressivism and Black conservatism, and we want to bring competition of ideas to Black voters. We also want to host a really great voter registration event. So just giving Black voters a chance to say, like, to see, you know, we're here and we're very excited about this next election. Waiting to hear if I'm going to get my 2024 ticket. We'll see how that plays out. But other than that, we continue to do outreach online, especially on Twitter, and you know, just going into these areas, especially Atlanta, just to pass out brochures and let Black voters know we're here.
Well, I certainly want to bring you back once we do have the ticket and during the primary, because I would like to discuss each of the candidates and who we feel is really going to move our community forward, because, you know, we got to understand that helping this community, helping our community, helps all communities, and it all kind of plays in together. So thank you so much, Felecia, for participating in this discussion. It's a very, very important topic, not just to me, but to everyone. I believe it should be. I'm sure our listeners got something out of it, because I know I did. And you're certainly welcome to come back at any time.
Thank you.
I will be inviting you back.
Awesome. I loved it. Thank you.
And for those who are listening, I love feedback. I love engagement. So please follow me on all social media platforms. Like, share, comment, and be sure to rate this podcast episode if you're listening to the podcast. We've talked about it. Now you go talk about it. Thank you so much for listening. This is Let's Talk About It with Janelle King.
The winning winningest team in baseball also has the most saves, and people who save the most money are winners. So start earning saves by investing in worthy bonds for only $10 each. These bonds earn a fixed 7% APY, and there's no fees, penalties, or minimum balance required, and they can be redeemed whenever you like. You can even round up everyday purchases to buy additional bonds. Go to worthybonds.com/save. That's worthybonds.com/save and save and win.
It's March, and we all know what that means. College basketball.
I know there are teams looking for a bump, but did you know that our friends at LGE Community Credit Union have a bump rate program for their CDs? If you have a CD with them and rates increase during the term, you have one chance to bump your rate, giving you the power to earn even more.
Take it from a pair of 680 The Fan wives. Head to lgeccu.org to find out what makes LGE #1 in Georgia.
Is there chaos in your closet?
Look, Blouse, you've got some nerve hanging there like that.
I can't help it. I'm jammed in here next to this suit.
Hey, I'm a three-piece, all right, which means I need a little more room.
You've got a lot of attitude for a linen suit.
I'm a polyester blend, sweetheart, and there needs to be room for men's clothes, too.
Hi, I'm Christina, and at Artisan Custom Closets, we help families organize and simplify their closets with customized storage solutions. See what's possible for your home at artisancustomclosets.com, and then call us for a free in-home consultation.